Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our special podcast takeover episode where we are taking over Reid Only Access this week for International Women's Day 2022, where the theme is Break the Bias. This is all about creating an equal gender world, a world free of bias, stereotypes, and discrimination, a world where difference is valued and celebrated. So today we have four wonderful women on the call with me from Core Technology Systems. We have Amanda Farrell, Yoon-Mi Kim, Kat Greenan, and Hannah Newman. Hello, ladies.
Hi.
Hello, Katie.
You're going to have to forgive me. This is my first time ever hosting a podcast, so probably won't do our Harry Reid and Mark Pembroke the justice they deserve when they host their regular podcasts, but thought it was an important topic and something for us to all have a good chat about today. So I thought I might start with you, Amanda, if you want to give an introduction to you and your role at Core and any snapshot of your career that you want to go into.
I will do indeed. Thanks, Katie. And can I just say that you've just demonstrated almost instantly imposter syndrome by saying I won't do as good a job as the men, but
Very true.
but I'm absolutely sure that you will, Katie. So yes, I'm Amanda Farrell. I'm Managed Services Director at Core. I've been here almost 2 years. I have been working mostly in service provider, network service provider since 2001. So seen a lot of changes over my career, not least in having at the beginning of my career being always the only woman in a meeting to actually that being quite a rarity now. So yes, a lot of change over that time.
Awesome. And Yoon-Mi.
Hi, I am R&D project lead here at Core. I've been here for about 2 years and my role has evolved over those 2 years. I have been working in tech for quite a long time. I had a little break in between and for about 5 years worked for a charity, but mainly tech. And yeah, it's been pretty good for me actually.
Excellent. Looking forward to hearing more on that. And Kat Greenan, our newest Microsoft MVP. Superstar woman. Do you want to give yourself an intro?
Yeah, I don't know if I could beat that intro though, Katie. So, yeah, I'm Kat Greenan and I'm a Microsoft Solution Specialist at Core and recently announced MVP, which is really exciting. So I've been at Core for about 6 years now, and I started off as a customer success manager and was really interested in the technology side of it, and so asked for my role to change basically, and got the change, which is quite nice. I also do a lot of things in the tech community, so podcast hosts, blogging, speaking at conferences, getting involved in lots of different user groups, which is, yeah, been really great over the last 12 months or so. But yeah, that's me.
Brilliant. And Hannah Newman, a return visitor from the last podcast. Couldn't keep her away.
I have to admit, my bucket list was be a guest on a podcast. And now it's 2 in 1 week. Loving life. Yeah, so my name's Hannah. For those that didn't hear the podcast last week, I carry actually 3 roles. I'm an account manager at Core, also partner manager at Core. And for one of our partners, I'm a Microsoft solution and Microsoft modern workplace sales specialist even. I'm not Kat, basically, but I apparently was in my intro.
Thank you very much for the introductions. So I love that we have very diverse experiences on our call today, because I know Amanda and I have shared we've definitely experienced some challenges in our career, and Yoon-Mi and Hannah have said that they've had really positive experiences throughout. So I thought let's start there. Yoon, do you want to give a bit of information about what it's been like in your career and how you felt supported in the tech industry, which I hope I'm not alone here in thinking that's not a common thing that you normally hear from women in tech?
I think because I got a degree in computer science and mathematics, but then my first job in tech was actually in sales. So, and then the sales director was female and she was really supportive of me. And then I moved into finance in the tech industry and they were really supportive of me as well. And now I'm in the ops department and my current boss is super supportive. So I just feel like my entire career in tech everyone has just been really encouraging, telling me to do whatever I want, and yeah, giving me lots of room to grow.
It's brilliant. And Hannah, how about your experience?
Yeah, so I kind of feel like I'm going to be a lifer at Core. But I've been at Core for 6 years at the moment. But it's my first job out of university, and yeah, kind of similar to you. My boss at Core, he is doesn't. When we got a split team of women and men, so it's pretty much half and half. So no negativity. And throughout my career, I actually started as a marketing intern at Core, and now I'm an account manager and a partner manager. So I've had some great progression as well.
Brilliant. Now, Amanda, different perspective, perhaps?
Yes, perhaps. So I started out as customer service manager when I moved into tech. My degree was in Spanish, so I didn't really bring any kind of technical knowledge into the workplace at all. But yes, when I started out, there were quite a lot of people who were IT directors with whom I had to meet, who really didn't know anything about IT, and they were there just because they knew a bit about printers, etc. So I'd have a lot of meetings with these gruff old men, and yes, it was quite difficult. I think there were very, very few women in tech when I first started, and I wasn't technical myself. But I worked with a great bunch of people, mostly men, and they taught me a lot about the technology that we were delivering. So my technical knowledge grew. And like you, me, I had a very supportive boss who did encourage me to develop my technical knowledge, insisted I develop it in actual fact. And he's been a great advocate throughout my career, and is actually the COO at Core now. So I've kind of followed him throughout my career, and he has been super supportive. So yeah, that's been a real positive.
Brilliant, and well done, Brian. We always love hearing about good advocates. I always want to sing out their names, and I've been very fortunate to have some good ones in my career too. What about you, Kat? I know you did a TikTok video this morning on LinkedIn about some of your experiences. Do you want to share?
Yeah, so everyone follow me on TikTok, Lab of Cat. There we are, a little plug. But I have had mixed experiences. In terms of people I work with, it's been great. My boss, great. I could have said, I want to do more of a solution specialist role. He was like, yep, let's do it. Always, like helping me and supporting me. Where I've not had good experiences is actually with customers, so people outside of my organization. And I don't know why that is. There's a mix. Maybe I'm just rubbish, but maybe I don't know why it is, but there's been a couple of horrible experiences with customers where one of them, I was sat in the room with the IT director. I was doing a workshop. I don't know why, but it felt worse because it was in the room. This was back quite a few years ago. I was not even a couple of years into my role. So I definitely didn't know as much as I do now. And there was other women in the room, and he just treated the women horrendously, laughing in their faces, downgrading them, put them down, saying we don't know what we're talking about, we don't know anything. All the other guys in the room were laughing. It was just a horrendous experience, and I was definitely not as confident as I am now in what I could do. So it was it was a learning experience. It was horrible. And I was like, oh God, I hope I never have to work with him again, which is bad, which is negative. And there's been times where people have said, oh, can I ask you the technical question? Is that all right, love? Is that, like patronizing, even though I've just done a technical presentation to them and shown them how to create like a DLP policy or something. And I'm like, maybe it wasn't technical enough for you, but that's as far as it goes. Like you can't go any further than I've shown you. So I don't understand. Anyway, yeah, there also has been also people in the room where they kind of direct the technical questions to the man. So it'll be one of the sales team who are in the meeting with me, and all the questions go to them, and they have to kind of say, no, sorry, Kat, do you want to jump in here? Because, they automatically assume that I don't know what I'm talking about. And I think that could be a mixture of things. That's not necessarily to say it's because I'm a woman. Partly probably is, but also it could be they see I'm younger. They see, can't use that excuse for much longer though, to be fair. They keep saying, they might be thinking, maybe I've not shown that I know enough. Maybe it's me that's not proven that, I'm the technical resource in the room. Could be a mixture of things. I haven't figured out what that is yet. But I've noticed it has happened a lot less in the most recent year or couple of years. And I think that is because of the way that now I'm starting to carry myself in meetings, and I'm happy to challenge people on things. And, if they're saying something about technology that I don't think is right, previously I'd be like, well, they must know a bit more than me. Whereas now I can kind of feel like I can challenge them. So the confidence is there more so than it was. So it happens less. So maybe that has something to do with it as well. Sorry,
I think
a few points in there.
No, that's good. I think you're being generous when you're saying some of those things too. But it's interesting the point you make around how perhaps they didn't believe that maybe you were credible enough, or that you had enough technical experience, and that could have been an assumption, because that is something that I have read a lot about in research around gender inequality, around how men are most often hired on potential, whereas women are hired based on past accomplishments, and that women are always, and there's studies showing it, that always asked to prove a lot more credibility to back up their experience and their opinions than men are. So yeah, I question whether that's something maybe, Amanda, you've experienced in your career, being asked to provide extra credibility for you to back up your opinion or thoughts. Or
I have, and I have a very close former colleague. And she's worked in tech for many, many years. I knew her as a customer and as a colleague, and she was a server engineer for quite some years. And her experience was she went to change some disks in a server for whom they had a contract, and she was asked to wait in reception while they faxed her boss to have her certificate and her exam certification faxed over before they would allow her to change the disks in the server. So to go back to your experience of the studies that women are expected to prove themselves, she literally had to prove her credentials before she was allowed to do her own job. So I do think that reflects, the story that Kat's telling us, and it is about this having to prove yourself rather than being given the opportunity to speak and disprove yourself.
I agree, and I think I've had similar experiences. So even most recently, before I joined Core, I was headhunted for a role with a marketing automation company, and I was put through more hoops than I've ever been put through in a recruitment process. I went through 11 interviews with people in 8 different countries for a role based in the UK. I wasn't running the world, by the way. And I did a 25-page presentation. I had to present to people in Australia, in Japan, in Sweden, all over the place. And it got to a point where there was a very senior female executive in Europe who said she wanted me for the role, and yet she doubted her own opinion because the woman who actually was meant to be the manager for the role was on maternity leave. So she said, oh, I'll just pass it up the chain to the next person. And then it went up through 3 different men in the US, and every one of them asked me about experience demonstrating something and proving my credibility. And I said, by the end of it, I was saying, look, you're asking me to do a job that I'm already doing now on a bigger scale. But my background, my proof, if you like, is that all of these previous jobs I've done, I didn't know how to do it before I came into it. And that should be enough to show that I have the potential to grow into this role if you don't feel like it's where it needs to be at the moment. Because that was something when I came to the UK, I'd never worked in marketing. I wasn't a project manager, and I became a project manager. I'd never been a marketing manager. I built a marketing department and won several awards in my first 6 months in business. I'd never managed strategic partners before. I went on to do that really successfully. So, I've got a lot of, and I'm tooting my own horn here, toot toot, because that's what we need to do on International Women's Day. But I have a lot of experience where it's proved that I had done what they're asking me to do, and yet it wasn't enough. And in the end, they didn't hire anyone for the job. There were 1,000 people that applied for it, and I was the only one who got past round 6, and they made me go through 11 interviews and then didn't hire someone because there was just a disagreement between people internally. But I thought, wow, I just wondered if I've never spoken to any men or women who have been put through 11 interviews and my credibility being questioned so much during that process. And yeah, it's funny when you said earlier, Amanda, about imposter syndrome, because that definitely came into it then, starting to doubt myself like a whole lot more, going, wow, am I good enough to do this? Like, can I do this job? Which I had thought, no, I can do it. And so I think that's something where I'm very, very fortunate and grateful to be at Core, because it is, I can genuinely say, the first company I've worked for in the UK who I feel has a really strong senior leadership team who are supportive of women and respectful of diverse opinions. And it's the first time in marketing I was asked to come and present to the board multiple times when I have new ideas and strategies, rather than someone saying, give me your ideas, give me your presentation, and then taking my name off it and going and presenting that to the board, which has happened many times in my career. Anything you want to add there, Hannah?
No, nothing on that side of things. I don't know what was really weird coming to my head when you were talking presenting. I was thinking of just going off my little tangent in my head. When you go to like a conference hall and you have all the different stands at like a conference, a lot of people that I've ever heard, like you have a lot of young, attractive women put on the stands. But it's a bit weird because the women know that the reason they're on there is because they're young and attractive. And it's almost like, in a weird way, I mean, then they say it to each other, their colleagues joke with them, being like, oh, you're only on here, we're going to all the sessions, but you're here because you're pretty. So that was a track that was going through my head when you were talking there. I don't know how that links, but it was.
Oh, well, no, it's definitely something I've experienced. And yeah, you probably saw it in my earlier post. But I remember I talk to people about it sometimes now. I got invited to an event up in Scotland at Gleneagles where there were 200 people in attendance and only 4 women. And that was probably one of the most glaringly obvious examples of not seeing gender diversity and gender equality there. And I was there. I was very lucky to be there because I wasn't a director. All the others were directors and business owners and a lot more senior than me. But I was there because I was representing a new product for which I was the product manager, and I'd been promoting, and we were sponsoring the event. And yet the entire time, nobody wanted to hear about the product. They didn't want to talk to me about business. They just commented on my looks. They just made derogatory sexist comments. It was really tough couple of days to deal with because I was trying so hard to be taken seriously. And yet it wasn't the culture in the room. It was, and I'm not saying that everybody there was like that, but it certainly was an uncomfortable situation. And I had people follow me to my hotel room. I had people make comments in the bar. Like, it was just, yeah, and I've experienced that too many times. It would be really nice to just kind of be taken seriously at a work event. And yeah, you probably saw again more comments in my social media post, which on LinkedIn I posted today, about some of the sexist and gender biased comments that have been made towards me in my career, which have been pretty awful. One of them was actually made by a woman. And so I don't think it's always true that it's just the men who are contributing to this. It's absolutely something where we need women to support women as well. But it is something that, yeah, I can say from my experience has been very prevalent.
That actually reminds me of something that happened to me when I was really young, and I was sent on a trip to France with a jolly to go cricketing. And once I got there, I realised I'm literally just here because I'm female and young. I had nothing to do. My job was literally just to be there, and work were paying for it, and it was a work jolly. And oh my goodness, once I realized, I was pretty crushed. I felt so used.
That is crushing. Yes. So a not dissimilar story. A colleague and I won just a sort of a competition that we were sent on just a weekend's yachting, and we were going to be staying the night on the yacht. It was just like Sunseeker yachts down in Portsmouth. And there were very few women there, so we went to the bar and we had some dinner and we had some drinks, and we went to sleep on the yacht. And very late that night, some of the guys who were also on this jolly came and sort of got on our yacht and tried to break into our rooms and things like that. It was really quite scary, actually. But of course, the next day it was all kind of corporate funded, and we had to play nice and smile and pretend none of it had happened. But yeah, that was pretty scary, actually, and that happened.
Yeah, I do feel like sometimes that's been a challenge in itself, like you say there, Amanda, that you've got to just play nice and smile and kind of move on. And I've definitely battled with that as being probably a more outspoken person, is when to call someone out, when to just stay quiet, because that was one of the comments that was consistently made to me, is if you want to get ahead, you need to shut up more often, because if you don't say anything and you provide the information to make other people look good, then you'll get there. And if you don't call out bad behavior, because otherwise you seem to then be a troublemaker, if you like, if you're calling out bad behavior, and people that they don't want to have you around, because then everyone feels like, oh, they've got eyes on you. And it's a really hard one to walk, like, because I want to call everybody out for bad behavior like that, but it shouldn't be that it then hinders your opportunities in your career.
In a weird way, though, obviously, like, breaking into someone's room is horrendous, and I'm not condoning like that behavior. But almost sometimes I think there's some disadvantage being a female. But to flip it, if you're getting almost like a free corporate trip and you like the people you're with, is there not sometimes to use that to your advantage, to being surrounded by people that maybe are more seen in the company? Yeah, fine, you're there for the wrong reasons, but you can almost manipulate that situation for the right reason. Like, if that, do you know what I mean? Obviously, breaking someone's room is awful. Following back to a hotel room is awful. But almost if it's, do you know what I mean? Or am I not making any sense here?
Oh, but I wasn't. Myself and my colleague weren't sent there purely because we were females. It was a sweepstake, and we won it.
Okay.
So it was just coincidental. We weren't sent there because we were young and female. Neither of us were particularly young, even at that juncture, I don't think. But yes, yeah, I know what you're saying, Hannah. You're saying sort of use your looks, use your sort of sexual attractiveness to your own advantage. But I don't really think that kind of thing is going to break down unconscious bias, and it certainly doesn't work once you reach middle age. So yeah, it's a
A
difficult
man
one.
who is as young as you feel, as young as you feel.
Have any of you guys heard about the Howdy Howard gonna say it all wrong now, Heidi Howard study? If you've read the book by Sheryl
No.
Sandberg, Lean In, you might have heard of it. No?
I've heard of
Yes.
it. I've heard of the book.
Yeah.
Lean In.
I just thought I might bring that up because I found it really interesting. So back in 2003, the Columbia Business School conducted a study to test perceptions of women and men in the workplace. They started with a Harvard Business School case study about a real life entrepreneur, Heidi Rosen. And the case was described about how she was a successful venture capitalist by using her outgoing personality and vast personal and professional network that included many powerful business leaders in the tech sector. They assigned half the students to read that one and assess it, and half the students to read the exact same story with one difference. They changed the name from Heidi to Howard. And the results were that the students rated Heidi and Howard equally competent, which as they should, because it was the exact same accomplishments that came out of it. However, the overwhelming response was that Howard came across as the more appealing colleague, with Heidi being described as selfish and not the type of person you would want to work for. And this is something I've read in a lot of like research and things, reading books about empowering women, that's something that a lot of women come up against, is if you don't display the typical behavior that is expected of you, then you're not liked. Or if you maybe portray some of the more masculine behavior, then you're seen to be taken in a totally different way to how men would be in that situation. Have any of you experienced any of this yourselves?
No.
Oh, great.
Not that specific scenario. I would say that if you're, you become, I guess, as a woman, typically less attractive if you're louder, for some reason. But
If you're a what, Kat?
sorry,
Did you say if you're a what? A louder?
louder.
Is that
Oh
like
God,
a
is that my
Scottish
accent?
term?
Oh my God, loud, talking
Loud.
Yeah, no.
at a higher volume.
Louder. That's it
Is
must be a
that's a
Scottish term.
That's a
that's like
real
an
word,
English
Kat.
word, right? That is
Yeah,
an
it's a
English
real
word
word. It's a
that's
real
It is
used
a
word.
real
around
word.
the
That's
world.
me being the Aussie.
Yeah.
Bloody hell, I need to get
Not in
subtitles.
Australia.
Turn on the captions in this Teams meeting. Blimey hell. It's not even that strong an accent, Katie, so I don't know how you deal with Chris on your
Hey, I know
team.
you
But
have a great
do you
accent.
not
We've
think?
used you for voiceovers.
I think it's a dance that we're all aware of, though. I
Yeah.
think we are all aware that if we sort of stand up and behave aggressively, we will be penalised more harshly than if we were a man doing the same thing. And I think we are all aware of those studies. We're aware that we can be described as bossy. Men are very rarely described as bossy, strident, aggressive, and also sort of, this idea of women being plucky as well. And, you don't get many plucky men. But I think we are all aware that there is this dance that needs to be done.
And what are some of the things, if we're recognizing this bias, what are some of the things that you guys either do yourselves or that you admire other women doing that can help, or even men too, but to help overcome this bias that we see?
Weirdly, growing up, my dad it was a kind of white male, is a white male, but he was from a very working class background. And he said to me growing up that kind of one thing that he was going to challenge, kind of getting a job in the corporate world back in the 60s, 60s, 70s, 80s, can't remember his age. He said that being working class would be his kind of downfall for a lot of job interviews. And he said to me growing up, being white and middle class, coming from a middle class background, he said your downfall is going to be your gender. So you kind of have two options. You can either let that become an obstacle, or you can learn to overcome that and kind of face that challenge and change the way your personality is perceived slightly so that it's not an issue. So almost, which is a shame, because you would never have to tell a man to think about being a man before they go into a job interview. That would be mental. Like, if that makes sense.
Definitely.
I think that's the point, though. I think we don't want women to have to think like that. Just like we don't want working class people to have to overcome issues to get the same opportunities.
We don't want them to, but at the moment they have to, because it's quite prevalent that that's an experience a lot of people will have. And you don't know, I think it's one of those things, you don't know who you're going to be walking into an interview with. You might have someone who's really open-minded. When I had my interview with Reid, he was brilliant, and we had a really great open discussion. And then when I met the SMT at Core, again, same thing. They were really welcoming and supportive and respectful, and that's not always the experience everybody has, where you're looked upon equally as somebody else of a different gender, perhaps. What about things like, I know you guys said that you have great experiences for the most part of being women working in tech now, but throughout your careers. What about gender pay gaps? Anybody have an opinion on that, and whether you've ever had to, I mean, have you guys, you don't have to obviously talk about salaries, but have you had those conversations? And if so, how often have you had conversations where you've asked for a pay rise? Because let me just maybe go back a step. Research again has showed that males will ask for pay rises almost every time they have a one-to-one, or at least regularly throughout review processes, regardless of whether their job has changed and whether they are overachieving or exceeding. Generally, they're not, and they still feel entitled to get a pay rise. Whereas women have traditionally not asked for pay rises, even in times when they're exceeding expectations and overachieving or taking on bigger roles, and are more likely to just accept it if they are not given a pay rise. And one of the things when we're talking about gender pay gaps, still so huge across the world, or it's been very, very slow progress to try and catch up, is that women have started so far back, right from many, many, many years ago. And when you get hired now, employers will ask, or potential employers will ask, what your current salary is, and they'll give you either a similar or a small increment on that, which means if we were always well behind, we're never going to catch up unless there's some kind of reset. So how often do you guys come up against this, or in your careers have you come up against this, and trying to understand, are you on equal pay to your male counterparts, and do you feel comfortable having those conversations?
I have an interesting insight into this, actually. For my own part, I've always asked for pay rises and generally got them. Sometimes I have to go back and do something additional, or prove myself and come back and say, well, I've done these things. My role's expanded. I'm delivering more, and generally I've been okay with that. But I sat on a pay board several years ago, and somebody who was a man who was married, and his wife had just had a baby, and they said, oh, let's give Steve a few extra grand. He's just had a baby, they'll need it. and it did cross my mind that the same conversation was unlikely to be taking place in his wife's workplace. And I think it does compound. I mean, you, my lovely colleagues, are younger than I am, and you haven't embarked on that maternity sort of penalty yet. But I think that really impacts on women, and I think that's also caused by bias, because many women, they'll take their maternity leave, they'll go straight back to work, and they'll work full time, and you know, and keep on delivering efficiently. But I do think that there is this societal idea that the man who becomes a father merits more pay, whereas the woman might be less committed and doesn't. I think that comes into play.
It's an interesting point you make there too about maternity leave and embarking on that journey. I feel like that could be a whole nother episode. Maybe we could breach into, but let's take it out of the workplace for a bit, and some of those biases that come up outside of the home. And one of the things, again, I was like reading about was about how women are expected to do more of the non-promotable tasks. So things like organizing, scheduling, taking notes. And I've definitely had that experience in the workplace around being expected to be the one to take notes. And I am a note taker, but I don't think I should be expected that I will be the one who takes the notes and does all the scheduling and tasks from it, because I'm the only woman in the room a lot of the time. And that's certainly been the case. But I think that sometimes stems from some of those behaviours that we see outside of the workplace as well. And there's still roles in the household or jobs that are done that are seen as like gender specific roles. And that's something we need to still break down, and we need to educate people around comments that they make on that, expectations they have, because if there were more of those tasks that were shared in the home, and men were also supported to stay home with children, and it wasn't such a societal pressure that it should be the woman, maybe women would feel a little bit more comfortable about having more balanced time, being able to be the career woman that she wants to be, and also being a parent. I mean, I'm not a parent, so forgive me for any comments made on it that people disagree with, but I think there's definitely some women who want to be and some who don't, or some who don't know, and every woman deserves to have the right to choose and shouldn't be penalised if she wants to stay home and spend more years with her children, but also shouldn't be penalised or thought that she's not looking after her children as well if she goes back to work, and however soon she wants to go back to work. There was something where I can't remember who the CEO was. She was of Twitter or Yahoo, and she decided to go back to work after 2 or 3 weeks of having a baby, and she was slammed in the media for it. And the fact that she had a husband at home who was choosing to be the stay-at-home parent didn't really come into it. And I thought that was pretty awful, that women don't just have the choice to choose. Why should she have to stay home for a certain period of time? She should be able to choose what she wants to do that works for her and her family. So I don't really know where I'm going with this point, but I do think that what you were saying, Amanda, is some of those expected behaviours definitely filter outside of the workplace as well.
Yeah, I mean, Katie, linking back to your kind of gender pay gap comment that links to, I suppose, outside gender bias. Interesting, they did a study recently where in America, every dollar a man earns, a woman earns 78 cents. Is that right? Yeah. So, but the argument coming back from kind of a lot of men is saying that that is because women take less paid jobs. So a lot of men might be kind of higher from the corporate world, whereas a lot of women might go into more kind of healthcare roles like nurses and stuff like that. So by the way society's deemed it, those roles just aren't as high paying. But that kind of goes back to the reason why women are going into nursing roles is from kind of language that people use with children growing up. I mean, you definitely break the mold in the fact that you've got a degree in computer science. I didn't know that. That's cool, by the way. But a lot of the time, like when children are growing up, even if you see, I mean, I see it with my own friends' parents, a young child comes. If it's a boy, they're like, was that a fun game? How hard did you kick the ball? If a girl comes back from the park, they might say, oh, did you get dirty? Like, are you okay? Are you cold? And that kind of language automatically kind of triggers how you think, and therefore might actually determine what jobs you pick, which therefore might lead to a gender pay gap, if that makes sense. It's almost like a big, massive circle.
And who is it that determines that nursing is less societally valuable than working as a network engineer, for example?
Oh, that's a whole nother ballgame, though, isn't it, Amanda? Should footballers earn £1 million and should a teacher not? God, different can of worms, my friend.
We'll just make a note of that for future episodes.
I do have a teacher friend who teaches maths, and he often sees girls in his class are told, "Oh, you're not really a maths person, try something else." So it still happens at a really young age. Girls are discouraged from maths, and if a boy is not good at maths, he's just told to try harder.
Yeah, it's those kind of unconscious bias, I think, that make a huge impact without people even knowing it. And I know that there is, again, like teachers in schools, there's been quite often research that's shown that when girls speak out without raising their hand, they'll be told you need to raise your hand. And then when boys do it, they'll quite often be answered because the teachers are going, oh, well, it's good that they're getting involved. It's good they're asking questions and they're engaged rather than playing up. And that shouldn't be the way it is. It should be the same for everybody and treated the same way, because that language can really have a big impact on people. And I mean, I credit my sister. She's an amazing mum. I've got 2 beautiful little nieces, and she absolutely encourages them to do, you know, all the activities that they want to do, and is aware of that language. And I gave them these cute little books. One was called Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls, and another one, ABC, What Can She Be? And I think, you know, starting from a really young age, encouraging both girls and boys to believe that they can be whatever they want to be, and there aren't gender specific roles anymore. They shouldn't be, is a great way to start. And even when you said earlier, Hannah, about I think when we spoke earlier today about quite often boys will be given toys that are more seen as gender specific, or like, you know, building
like Lego.
or yeah. Well, it's funny you said Lego, because I can't remember when it was. It was quite a long time ago. I think Lego actually sent out a memo to parents, or a note in toys, and it said, dear parents, like, you know, our toys are not made for boys and girls, and so don't assume that girls will want to play with this or boys will want to play with this. We're encouraging all of them to create, and that's what it's about, and they should be able to create whatever they want to. And I thought that was a really forward thinking approach from a business, and such a big business. And I think a lot of businesses could take that approach, and schools as well, in terms of, let's try and break down those gender bias and the current norms that are a bit restrictive.
I think toys and clothes have become more gender specific than they were 20, 30 years ago. In actual fact, I think Lego was very non-gender specific many years ago when I was a child. But I don't know, since Disney took over, it's very, very gender specific now. Lego Friends is lots of little dolls, and then, you know, the boys get to make sort of Star Wars and dinosaurs. Yes, I think there's a lot to be done to address that now. This segregation that you see with toys, and the campaign "Let Toys Be Toys," I think, is a really good example of trying to sort of bring us together in the middle there.
Absolutely. So what about any young ladies who are wanting to look at being in positions of leadership? That's something where a lot of young girls don't automatically aspire to be a leader in their field of choice, because they don't always believe it's possible to be. So how can we help change that conversation? Is there anything that you would recommend parents to read, or give to their children to read, or any podcasts that you listen to, any kind of resources, or even teenagers, young adults who are looking at it themselves?
So for technology specific stuff, I would recommend getting on Twitter first of all, because the tech community on Twitter is huge. And on Twitter, there are lots of groups for women in tech. I'm sticking to the women in tech thing because that's what I know. And there's a couple of ones. So Tech Stylers is a women in tech group, and they do like a meetup every month, and there's lots of like women of color from different backgrounds in there. There's also women in teams. So there's a Microsoft Teams specific one. What I find as well on Twitter is that the community is very, very supportive, and it's usually, if there's any kind of bias or anything, or any horrible comments or anything, it's usually from like random people. It's not from people who are working in tech and want to encourage others to get on there. So if you're a young teenager on Twitter, already, then you can start searching for certain hashtags, like tech community buzz is another one that always comes up. And if what you can do to really immerse yourself into that community is interact, comment, like, and even from there, starting to put out your own content, people respond to it and kind of bring you into that supportive community. So it's a great place to start, if you are kind of looking to just find a place that is kind of supportive. And the lean in thing as well. So there is a group based on the Lean In book, and it's a group of women. I'll see if I could paste the link so you could put it in the show notes or whatever you have. But that's a really great group, because it's all about women leaning on each other for support in their careers, not just tech. So there's loads of groups out there. Just have a search online, but Twitter's where I'd say is where a lot of the supportive people that I've experienced anyway live. So that's what I would say for technology specific.
To add to that, if you don't find a supportive group, there is one out there. Keep looking.
Yep. Hannah, anything that you like to read? I know you've got.
Do you know what? If you can see my bookcase behind, I'm like the epitome of not pro women. I've got like 50 Shades of Grey, Twilight back there, all super like. No, I'll pass on that comment, Amanda Katie, even sorry.
Okay, Amanda, what about yourself?
I loved Lean In when it came out. I was aware that it was targeted at a very specific demographic. Sheryl Sandberg got a lot of flack for that. She did subsequently send out something of an apology. I think after she was widowed, she did recognise that she had been in a very privileged position, and the privilege that she was afforded wasn't necessarily available to all women. However, I do think a lot of the points she made were valid and helpful to professional women, looking for leadership roles, things like don't sit at the back of the room, take your seat at the table. Those were things that really stuck with me. Why not take your seat at the table? And so that was helpful. Another book that I really enjoyed was by Arlie Russell Hochschild. She wrote The Time Band. She also wrote The Time Bind. She also wrote The Second Shift. She's an American writer, and she did a lot of studies on this. And it was all about work and time and making things happen. And that's one I can definitely recommend as well.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Katie, do you know what is weird actually is Reese Witherspoon, the actress. She actually did she won some sort of award in some sort of film industry award. I don't know what it was.
Oscar.
It's probably an Oscar. Let's call it an Oscar. She won an Oscar lately. And in her speech, she was talking about how all the, if I call it like kind of mainstream kind of rom-com style movies, what really annoys her about the script, you can tell when a man's written the script or when a woman has, because if a man has, at some point where, the trouble's going on in the film, the woman will turn to the man and say, what do we do next? She was like, in what real life scenario have you ever seen that happen? The guy turns to the woman. They even say on aeroplanes, please look for a woman nearby to help you. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, she's like,
I've never heard that on a plane.
I've never heard that.
Maybe it's just in my imagination. But yeah, no, she was saying that in situations, it is always the woman usually that will take care of the more vulnerable people around. So she was like, it's mental that scripts like that are written, and that just kind of creates the dialogue for women that, I don't know, you do need a man's help to get through stuff. That makes sense.
Well, I've definitely said that before. Not all the time, but when I was stuck on a boat in the Bay of Islands and in a really horrible storm and our sail wouldn't go up, I definitely turned to my partner at the time saying, what do we do now? Because he knew how to sail, supposedly, and I did not. So but I know what you mean, Hannah. And yeah, it's one of those things. It's an unconscious bias that happens too often that conditions us right from an early age through books, through movies. Like, I mean, that's another thing where little boys were quite often brought up to be, what can you do and achieve and what impact can you make? And little girls were taught how to be a princess and how to appeal to men. And the number of times I've had people make comments to me, oh, you're really smart, why don't you have a boyfriend? And I'm like, oh, why is that an automatic assumption? Like, it's just, it shouldn't be the case, but it's very conditioned. Or, so do you want to get married? Or when people get engaged or get married, when are you having children? And it's these questions that are asked to women that are very different to what are asked of men. Quite often in my experience anyway.
They also don't believe you when you say you don't want kids. Like, you'll change your mind. I'm 30 years old. Like, when am I going to change the mind? When's it going to be changed? Tell me.
They will stop asking you once you're 40, Kat. So I was like this from being 18. I said I didn't want children. And it never let up. You'll have children. You'll change your mind. I bet you're halfway through it now. Yeah, you'll change your mind. And then when I turned 40, they stopped asking me. And then I got pregnant and everybody was really shocked. So I had the last
Wait,
laugh.
that's the trend, Amanda.
10 more years.
That's the thing. It shouldn't be an expectation, or and it shouldn't. And some women get very uncomfortable about it. So what? Like, you shouldn't always bring it up all the time and just have that assumption. Some can be quite sensitive. Might not want to have children. Might not be able to have children. Like, you just don't know. So it shouldn't be that those are the questions that are asked, and instead we should be talking about the impact that women make as well as men, and the accomplishments that and achievements that have been probably not celebrated as much either. Because Amanda, you brought it up at the start of the call around imposter syndrome. A number of times I've thought, like, oh, I shouldn't really do this because is it seen to be a little bit like conceited if I talk about things that I've done well myself? And too many women think like that and worry that we're going to be perceived in a particular way, so we hold back. So I'm going to give you guys an opportunity right now, a little humble brag moment. Anyone want to tell us about some great achievements you've had in your career? Please do so, because we want to celebrate them.
Can I not go after Kat, seeing as what she's just been awarded? Can Kat go first?
Kat can take my go-to.
No,
You're the one with the computer science degree, and Jesus.
Absolutely. You make an impact every day, Yoon. Look at all the stuff you do for us at Core. And Hannah, same thing for you. You've had an amazing career through Core, going from an intern to now a very successful saleswoman, and one of our top in the sales team, who's absolutely hitting a home run with your pipeline, and your customers love you. So if you're not going to brag about yourself, I'm going to do it, guys.
I mean, Katie, my head is big enough. No, I mean, yeah, I mean, I look back at, I suppose I'll kickstart off then. I do look back. I think I joined Core straight from university, worked in a pub, worked on like a 3-month, like literally like work experience thing. And funny enough, actually, I actually got my full-time job at Core because on my second or third day, I admit I'm a smoker. I was outside smoking, and a group of kind of men just came outside, and I knew they worked at Core, saw them inside. I was like, "Hi, I'm Hannah. Hi, I'm Hannah," to all of them. Turned out they were our SMT at Core. So I just interrupted their conversation and was just literally like, "Hi guys, I'm Hannah. I'm the new person in marketing." Anyway, my boss, who is still today, Rye, he kind of gave me like, I thought was a weird look at the time, like, and later he pulled me to meet me. He goes, "You're really friendly and chatty. Have you ever considered being in sales?" I was like, I suppose so. He goes, "I hear you're on like a 3-month kind of like work experience thing. Would you like to interview for the sales job?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." Had no idea about technology, but yeah, 6 years on, obviously, I work for Core. I work for one of our partners, Bytes. I am doing a good job, thanks, Katie, patting the back to me. But yeah, so yeah, I mean, it is amazing how, if you're confident in yourself, how much you can achieve. That would be my message.
Absolutely. I think having belief in yourself is so important, and jumping at those opportunities when they're presented to you. And also, we should celebrate the fact that there are people like Reid who do call out opportunities like that, and give you those chances to try something different, try something new. And I think, yeah, we should all do that for more people. Anyone else? Amanda?
Oh, excuse me. Go to Kat, please.
All right, Kat, our newest MVP. Obviously, that was something you mentioned in our recent chat about being something that was on your bucket list at 30. So you clearly have some goals and kicking through them.
I wanted to become MVP before I was 30, and I didn't get that, but I did get it at 30, so I'll just live with that. No, but I'm really happy to be awarded. So for those who don't know, it stands for Most Valuable Professional, and it's an award from Microsoft for giving back your technical expertise to the community. So that means that you're doing a lot of stuff outside of your paid job, sharing knowledge, doing conferences, blogging. And I did that for about 18 months before being nominated and then awarded. So it's a lot of time and work that goes into it, but what you get out the back of it is that community that you're part of. You meet new people, people who have the same interests as you. Everyone's really, really supportive. And it's a really great kind of award to just be recognized for all the stuff that you're doing. And that's probably the biggest one so far. I would say pushing the ability to move into a more technical-ish role is being able to do that within core. So I was customer success and I said, look, I want to do workshops, I want to do this stuff, can I do it? And they just go for it, see how it goes. And if it's all right, then you can carry on doing it. But yeah, that's probably mine as MVP.
Amanda, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, and that's fantastic, Kat. Well done. We're all so proud of you. It's really brilliant that you've got that recognition. It's really, really good. For my part, I think when I got the director title, I was very proud of myself. I've worked long and hard and really wanted to achieve that role. It comes with a lot of hard work and a lot of stress. It's not always easy, but yes, I'm very proud of that as an achievement. Although my mum did say to me, Amanda, are you ever sad that you haven't achieved what you could have done? And I thought, oh, a way to pop my bubble, really. It's not very supportive, is it? But yes, I'm quite pleased with that. Yeah. So I'll pass to you, me.
But before you do, I'll just say to Amanda and Katie, obviously you're both like directors at core in kind of your titles, and it is nice to have two female, marketing director and a managed service director. But that is nice to see from a lower down the chain perspective. So pat on the back to you two there.
Thank you.
Hannah.
Thank
Wasn't
you.
easy to get there, that's for sure.
Haven't heard from... Oh, sorry.
No, go you.
We haven't heard from you, Katie.
Yes, no, that's right. I'm hosting. I think last year was probably so I've been in the UK 7 years now, and I had a very humbling experience of essentially going back down to the bottom of the ladder when I moved to the UK. So when I left Australia, I had a very well-paid job in the Australian government and public service. And then I ran my own business, and I had won awards for being the top, I say salesperson, but the largest organisational growth out of more than 20,000 consultants in Australia. And it was pretty surprising at the time. It was a very proud moment for me. But when I called my partner at the time and told him, he was the first person I wanted to tell, he said, oh, so I'm with the boys, like I can't talk now. And then later on, he told me that I had taken something away from him because I was being successful in the job. So I think that sort of steered me in a different direction when I moved to the UK. And instead of continuing on with my business, I decided to go into a corporate career. But I didn't want to work in London, so I loved the village that I lived in Henley-on-Thames, and I went and worked in a physio clinic behind the desk as a receptionist while I was still doing some online business, and I was getting paid £7 an hour. And after where I'd been in my career in Australia, it was a hard pill to swallow. And then I worked my way up as a project administrator in another job, and then I went and got my Prince 2 qualification, became a project manager, only to have my boss yell at me in front of an entire room full of people and then say that they were moving to the agile methodology, so my qualification was useless. It was the first exam I had done in 10 years. And so I found out about another company in Henley that was a telecommunications business, and I liked the sound of them. So I actually went to the MD and said, I would like to interview for you. I'd like to work for you. He didn't have a job going. And then I told him what I could do. And very grateful he gave me the opportunity to set up a marketing department for them. And that's how my career kind of started in telecommunications, which I'd never worked in before. And I had to work 10 times harder than everybody else to just get up to speed with understanding the technology and the industry and working in a very male-dominated industry. and then went on, and my role kept on expanding so far, and I was asking for pay rises. And I won't go into all of that detail because we're running out of time. But then when I moved into another role in marketing, similar thing happened. Ended up having several people leave the business. I was given 4 jobs for the very low price of one, and I had to work really hard to fight to get the pay rise that I deserved and ask for the title that I deserved. And when I came to Core, that was a really big accomplishment for me, was to get the marketing director title for a job that I had been doing for quite some time, but it would not be recognised. And there were 2 times where I was told that I had earned that director title, and then because another man said, no, she shouldn't be a director, it was taken away from me and he was promoted to a director title. I was also told at one point, no, we don't have the budget for a director, and then they put a man into the same job as a director and then promoted him to CMO. So there's definitely been some very clear examples where there's been some discrimination there. But last year, coming to Core, I think really highlighted for me how much of a difference it can make when you're in a really supportive work environment, surrounded by people who believe in women in leadership and women who bring something different to the table. Because yeah, it was the first time I felt really proud. I bought my first house last year and I got my director title, and I felt like after this 7 years of really hard grafting in the UK, all of that really hard work was kind of paying off and being recognised. So thank you to you guys for being amazing work colleagues, and to all the people at Core who've been really supportive. And also I have to probably thank quite a few people both in my personal life. I have some amazing friends who've been very supportive and kind of pushed me through a lot of the stuff I've dealt with in very male-dominated environments that were particularly unpleasant at times, including Scott Rowe in my team now, who you guys all know. He's been an amazing supporter and advocate, and so is his wife, Helen. And there's been people like Scotty Morgan and Gareth Long and Martin Riley and Hugh, and people who've recognised kind of what I can do, and Neil Wilson at Virtual One, and they made huge differences to me in my career by being advocates and shouting about my achievements and my accomplishments when I wasn't really able to. So it's my very long-winded response, Yoon, but yeah, it's taken me a long time to kind of get to a point where I can feel like I can say I'm proud of my achievements. And I hope more women feel that they can do the same, and that they feel supported by others around them to do it.
Yoon hasn't given her one.
Come on, Yoon. Take us out.
I think my proudest accomplishment is probably working for the charity when I increased the fundraising from about 150k to 400k.
Woohoo! It's a good achievement.
Yes.
Oh, that's so good.
Amazing. Well, we're
Fantastic.
definitely going to be talking more about how we can do that together at Core as well, aren't we, Yoon? There's a project in the works. Stay tuned, people, for more coming on that front, and us being able to utilise those amazing skills that Yoon has of working with charities. Are there any final comments that anyone would like to make? I'm aware that we've come close to our hour here, so maybe some tips or any kind of actions that you'd like to see people taking to help push more women towards getting opportunities for roles in leadership, seeing more gender equality, gender equity. Any comments?
I think just speaking out, helping women speak out, talk about your pay rises, talk about how much you're earning. Nothing should really be a secret in that regard. That's quite an antiquated thinking, I think.
I think also when we're recruiting, and I'm guilty of this, I don't speak to recruiters and say, why aren't there any women on your shortlist? You know, there are some great female engineers out there, great female techs, you know, or with the potential to be that we've discussed. So, you know, I'm certainly going to speak to recruiters and say, you know, I want to see a woman on this shortlist, please. I
Absolutely.
think that would be beneficial. They might have to dig a bit deeper.
And I think that's a good point, Amanda, that if there isn't enough talent there, that's where we need more people to be sponsoring and mentoring and educating, and giving women the opportunity, and sort of promoting them and shouting about them, like I did for you, Hannah, and say, do you want to come try this opportunity? We need more men and women to be doing that, to help give women maybe that bit of belief or encouragement to try something new and to upskill or to apply for these other jobs.
I mean, Kate, I live by the motto of hashtag strong independent women don't need no man. So
Love it, Hannah. Absolutely. Well, we all value different perspectives and experience, and I think as long as people can start to be a bit more aware of their maybe unconscious bias, be aware of their language in the workplace, of how they speak to different people, whether they speak to the women in the work, well, not just in the workplace, that's a good point, it's outside of the workplace too. I know you mentioned that, Yoon, and sharing those non-promotable tasks that are too often just assumed that women will do. And be aware of, one of the things too is being aware of the bias when you give feedback, and making sure that women are given those opportunities to develop the behaviours and skills and talents for leadership roles that they are not so often given as the men in feedback, and it's very much becomes about behaviour. The last thing I wanted to say too was pass the mic in the meetings. I think you guys on the call are probably pretty good at being able to speak up in a meeting, but there are certain people who are not. And so for any of our listeners, we ask that if you feel there are people who are not being heard in the meetings, please be aware of it and pass the mic and amplify the voices of the women in the room, so that there is gender diversity and gender equality that we can hear there as well. But thank you so much for all of you for talking to us today, and I'm sure we'll have lots more to talk about in future episodes if we can get some of those going. But really appreciate all of your contributions and seeing your lovely faces.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you for hosting.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks,
Happy
Katie.
International Women's Day.
Bye-bye.
Happy
Bye.
National Day.
Bye.
Woo!